Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the SH Figuarts Dragon Ball Z RECOOME, another member of the Ginyu Force. We're almost done, just a couple left, and once we have them all done, I'll get them all on camera together so you guys can see them. But for now, you're gonna have to wait. This guy is the biggest one so far, and is he any good? That's the question. Some of them have been really good, some of them have been average. Let's see how this guy is. This guy is... well, he's interesting. Let me just leave it at that. He's an interesting release. So let's go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands just shy of 8 inches to the top of his hair, which makes him pretty close to, well, let's just say about 20 centimeters. And before we get into the meat and taters of the review, let's do a question of the day, and then we'll get into this. I think I've asked this before, but I'm sure different people are watching different videos. Which member of the Ginyu Force is your favorite? You can say based on character design or based on his superpower. I'm gonna go with Birder because I like the character design. That's about it. I think he looks really cool. That's all. All right, let me know in the comment section below which one you prefer and why, and we'll talk down there. All right, let's talk about the aesthetic on this guy. Now, this is really the main reason I said it's an interesting release. Some figures work well being unshaded, unpainted, some don't. For me, this guy, despite having a complete lack of any shading or line work on him, he looks good enough. I think it's simply because we have the colored armor. There's enough there that it works. He's got the extra sleeves on here, that gives him a little extra contrast. The composition is such for this character design that you don't really miss the shading as much. Now, I do prefer to have it, but I don't think it's as necessary. Somebody who has the gray and white armor, for instance, I think can get away without having any shading at all, like the gray parts in here, and then the white line work. I think that would look, I mean, that doesn't need shading. This solid white does look better with it, but there's enough going on that he doesn't really need it. Almost everything you see is molded plastic, except for the brown parts and the sleeves. I guess his trunks also. But everything else is just molded plastic with no paint on it. So that's why I said it's interesting. I don't know, some people are gonna hate that it has no paint. Some people hate when they do have shading. That's gonna come down to your preferences. From a composition standpoint though, this guy doesn't look like he needs something. Looks like he could use it, that's about it. So I think that's okay. We do have the logo here, which is very nicely done, and the face, which does have plenty of detail to help carry him along. I'll say they went a little heavy on mine with the line work in there around the mouth, but I think that's all right. And the other ones, the yelling mouths, look pretty good, but they did a good job with the scouter and the eyes, and you know, there's a little bit of paint in there, I guess, around his chest, but it's basically just molded parts, and I think it's fine. Sculpt work wise, I don't think they really could have done any better. It does look like what he's supposed to look like. I can't think of anything that I would need them to change. If you want to see a quick height comparison, here he is up against Goku. They do tend to scale the big guys down a little bit. They all tend to scale towards center, so the smaller guys are slightly taller than they should be, and the big guys are slightly smaller than they should be. But I think it's a reasonable compromise. I think it's pretty good. So aesthetically speaking, this guy's good. There's no real issues. He's not glossy. He's nice and matte or satin pretty much everywhere except for the joints, which are harder plastic, so that's kind of the nature of the beast. But even those aren't super glossy, so I like it. I think it's good. I wouldn't have minded a little bit more finish, of a shinier finish on here, but it's still fine. So I'm gonna give this guy a 9 out of 10. Well, 8 or 9, you can pick 8 or 9, maybe 8 if he could, if a little bit of line work might have pushed him over. I don't know. But it still looks pretty darn good. They did a good job with what they did, so I like it. All right, let's talk about accessories. We have the smirky neutral face that comes on him in the package. Then we get 3 different yelling or open mouth faces. They're all very similar, slightly different expressions, and then the eyes, of course, are pointed in different directions. Total of 4 heads, not too bad. Speaking of heads, we get 1 purple head for him, which makes him look like Captain Ginyu. No, I'm kidding, of course, that is a Captain Ginyu head. And you have that now, so that's cool. For hands, we have the 2 fist hands that come on in the package, then we have 2 different sets of karate chop style pose hands, and then 2 different sets of open palm style pose hands. We do get the 3-star Namekian Dragon Ball, very nicely executed. They haven't screwed those up yet, that's great. And then we do get the Namekian Frog. Mine is missing paint on its eyes. I'm wondering if you guys had that same problem. It does look weird without those. A little bit of black paint will fix that, but hopefully not everybody is having that problem, because not everybody just has black paint laying around in a tiny brush, so that could be a bummer if it's a widespread issue. But that's it for accessories, definitely enough. I don't think there's any more that we could have gotten other than a blast effect, which we just never seem to get anymore. So 9 out of 10. That's a good spread of accessories. That's a really good spread. A blast effect and a display stand would have set it over the top, but 9 out of 10 is still obviously a really good score, and we got a bunch of stuff, so that's good. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about articulation. The head is on a double ball peg, which is decent, but the ball peg itself is very small. If you look up there, it's very small, so there's not a ton of range in there. It's enough, but it's not a ton. There could be more, and the same thing is true for up here. So we have basically a barbell or a double ball peg with two very small balls, and it doesn't do much. And then before we even get into that, I'm sure you've noticed by now, his neck is just jacked. I don't know why they did it like that. If you lean it up at all, it's just a total mess. So you have to just leave it down here. Let's take that off. You have to just leave it down there, and then you still get gaps everywhere, and it's so hollow in there. This could have totally just had more material so that when you did lean it, it filled it in. But basically, if you pose this at all, and it has tons of posing, which is good, but it's so cavernous in there, and there's so much of a gap that his neck is just super duper weird. And his head does come off it very easily, so posing him is kind of a pain in the ass. But but it does work well enough. It's really a pain in the butt though. It's very finicky because the head wants to pop off and the neck wants to move when you want the head to move. It's very it's very tedious is what I'm trying to say if I don't choke. So you'll be able to get it done, but it's a pain in the butt. Shoulder pads are independently hinged and they do pop off very easily. Last time they did this, people complained that they came off too easily. I do agree, but also it keeps them from breaking. So, you know, you get what you get. We do have a butterfly joint in here, which is the right color. Good on them for doing that. I like that a whole bunch. If you pop the arm out just a little bit, you can really bring it across the chest. It gets terribly ugly. Like, that's just a huge gap. You don't want that. But it does work if you really need to bring the arm across the chest. So that's all right. You can see there's a big ball peg that lets the arm move around on the butterfly. And then the hinge itself works just fine. Full horizontal, no issues there. It's a little stiff, but it works. That's what she said. Full rotation. Bicep swivel is okay. Double jointed elbow, very nice. We've seen better, but we've definitely seen a lot worse, and it has good range, so I'll take it. And the hands are on big old ball pegs, which is okay. They don't get a ton of range, but it's enough. And it's not super gappy, so I'll take it. Everything's okay here, except for the butterfly joint, which gets so gappy, which is just the nature of a butterfly joint. So if you want that, you're going to have gaps. If you don't want that, then just don't use it, and it's okay. So I guess that's not really a problem, but it's worth noting. And you did probably see that pop off. It didn't break, though. All right, now for the torso, we have our hinge ball peg, I believe. Let me see here. Yeah, it feels like the same thing. He doesn't lean that far forward, but it's probably far enough. He's pretty chunky. He doesn't lean that far back, but again, it's probably enough. It's greasy in there. So it's fairly limited. He's bulky. Side to side is, again, okay, they are annoying. I get it, they're super annoying, but I'd rather that than they break. So what are you gonna do? So leaning side to side is pretty limited. Again, rotation is pretty limited. You can extend it up if you want, or mush it back down. It's the same as basically all the other joints, practically speaking. Now, these things are the same as the shoulder pads. They pop off very easily. That one's a little bit tighter, but they do come off very easily. And that's okay. I'm gonna leave that one there and this one off so that I can show you how the hips work. I mean, it's the same type of engineering, but I want to show you the functionality on him. So that's as far out as we can get on this side without a thing. With the things, it's the same thing, and it just swings out. So they don't really get in the way that way. Let's see how much they get in the way going forward, how it works. Well, you saw it here first. That's how it works. But I have to mention one other thing. We have a big old ball peg down here. It doesn't do much side to side. It does do it though. And it does rotate some, but it does lean back really far. So let me grab his crotch piece. And we'll try it again, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so that's there. We have him leaning back this time. Now we want to do the kick. Let's see what happens. Now we can get the leg up all the way without the crotch getting in the way at all. He doesn't have great range, but it is there. And he is bulky, so I'll give that to them. I'll give that to Bandai. It could have been way worse, Bringing the legs back, he kind of has a decent amount of butt cheek on there, so they do go back but out to the side a little bit. Again, I think it's reasonable. He's bulky, he's got armor. There's only so much you can do. These guys are made out of plastic after all, and when they're cartoons, they're not made out of anything. Thigh swivel works just fine, double jointed knee works really well. They're getting better at knees and elbows for the non-baggy clothed figures, so that's really good. I like all of that, no problem there. Now the ankles I still hate. It's a double ball peg ankle, and it's really gappy in order to afford the range. And the foot can come forward a decent amount. It's still not a ton, and it goes back a decent amount, but it's just gappy, and you're putting all of the weight of the figure on just a couple of ball pegs, which are only pressure fits, so it better be a pretty stiff ball peg, and they're only averagely stiff. So this guy can fall over fairly easily. He does have a decent ankle rocker. It is still gappy. Pretty much every pose for his ankle is gappy, except bringing it forward like that. So yeah, it's not the best design, but it is functional enough. Toe hinge is very loose for how heavy he is, and it's still not a particularly good looking toe hinge. So ankles still need a lot of work as far as I'm concerned. I don't know why they're still doing the double ball peg thing the way they do it, but it is what they're doing. So anyway, as far as the articulation goes on this guy, there's definitely some room for improvement, but given that he's a big bulky dude with armor, I don't know. I think they did a pretty good job. They balanced out what they needed to get it to be functional and to look good for the most part. There are a lot of things that are irritating though, like the head and the neck combo, and then the shoulder pads and armor plates popping off. Those things are irritating, but I don't think it's necessarily a drawback per se, an official one. So I don't know. I guess my final verdict for the articulation on this guy would be 7. It's average for a good figure. It's not impressive really by any means, and there are definitely problems, but at the same time I can understand why those problems exist. So yeah, he's not as good in the oh my gosh, that head slipping off constantly is definitely annoying. Okay, we'll just leave him right like that. Stop touching it. So final verdict on this guy. I really enjoy it personally. I like the way it looks a lot, and they did a really good job in a lot of ways. For me personally though, there's a lot of irritating things about this guy. It's very finicky, very troublesome to pose. It's gonna take a bit of patience because of the way these things pop off and the way the neck is. That being said, I do think objectively they did a pretty darn good job. There is definitely room for improvement, but it's a solid release. I'm gonna say this guy gets a generous 8. I'm gonna go 7.5. 7.5 on this guy. There's definitely a decent bit of room for improvement for the Figuarts line. It's still a very strong release. You guys can let me know how you feel about it in the comment section below, and we'll talk about it down there. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. That's okay too. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I have new videos almost every single day, and thousands already on the channel. So make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.